Hi guys, welcome to this new video tutorial. This time I will talk about Vray rendering. It will be mainly about flicker-free animations using existing final gather maps and creating a smooth fly-through animation in your scene. This works only if your objects are static, so no 3D objects in motion. Otherwise it will be complicated or more time consuming final gather pass. For this tutorial it will only work for static scenes like fly-through animations, for architectural animations. Welcome to this first scene. So this is my scene. It's just a simple cube which should represent a room. I have inside of the room a light, a chair, a table and some more chairs, even a door and a window. I have a setup camera which is inside of the room, and it has a simple animation going from A to B over 25 frames. This is just for tutorial purposes, so it's nothing complex, or just how to I just want to show you how I do flicker-free animations with Vray. So first of all, I'd like to set up my render settings, just very simple and basic. First of all, my render camera, my render settings. For the tutorial I will put very low so that my render settings are that my render times are pretty fast. Something like this, and that's for the common. Up here I mostly leave the globals at default, and the image sample I choose adaptive DMC and set this one to 2 for the first render tests, and amp up the threshold, which gives me a quality of the anti-aliasing and the sample levels. The lower the number, the more crisp and smoother your result will be, but your render times will increase a lot if this is lower than this. So for the tutorial's sake, or for the first render test, I'll put this one to 0.1. The environment, I will insert a HDRI image just for the outside of the box, which will be a sunny day most probably. So I will go into my file node, and what I always do is set this to mid-map so there's no filtering going on, and then I look for an HDRI image. So now I'll set up the HDRI image in my other texture, environment textures. So in the hypershade I'll copy the file node into the different other slots. So with the middle mouse I drag them into global illumination, into reflection and into refraction. You can even rename this for the sake of finding it again. This is my HDRI file node. You can tap show in viewport. Now it's in here. You see the sun is on the wrong side, so I have to rotate my image. So now the sun is more or less inside here, and then the HDR lighting is set. Go in settings, turn off show in viewport. Now the color mapping. I always work in linear workflow way, so all I just do is check this box and make sure this is still set to linear, and in your render view on the display check that this image color profile is set also to linear, and then if you render it should be rendered in linear mode but shown in sRGB. And then for global illumination, just turn it on, and for the render test set this to low, and this is mostly the settings I use for setting up my scene. This is the render region because I have a very low resolution, you can make this even smaller, this number here. Dynamic memory is how much RAM you have in your system built in. If you have it too low, you will get a loss in performance, so be sure to put it up to about 70% of your RAM you have, or 80%. I've got 16 gigs, so let's say I put 12,000 megabytes. And now we can first check what our first render looks like. And this is the first render. You can see the light is coming through from the HDRI image. It's very subtle, so you could increase the HDRI image exposure, or you could, what I would recommend you is use a physical camera from Vray. So yeah, first if you go into the camera, go into your camera attributes, and under Vray tick physical camera, and then at the bottom you get a Vray extra attributes, and in here you can also treat your Maya camera as a Vray camera, and then it is converted. You can use this FOV. I always tend to use it from the Maya camera. This is my film gate, which is now controlled by the Maya camera settings, so it's the ones up here. So those won't change. You can, but it doesn't matter what you type in here. Then the f number is like a real photo camera. The f-stop. Then you have the shutter speed, the ISO, vignetting, and exposure. I always tend to turn off vignetting, and for the first render test you can see now it is probably way too dark now with this f-stop, but we'll see. Okay, now it's way darker than before, so I would lower the shutter speed to 25 for instance, and increase the ISO to 400 probably, and the f number even to 5.6. So this should be way brighter now. Okay, it's looking better now. So now I would go into, or what in general you would have done way before, is assigning shaders to your meshes. I will quickly do that. Nothing special or particular, just simple shaders for Vray to get a nice for direct lighting. I would prefer to create a Vray light, Vray rectangle light, and place this one right inside of the window, which is, let's say, 200 by 200 meters, and rotate it by 90 degrees. Something like this. Let's see what the render looks like now. Okay, now this is what my scene looks like with the light placed in front of the window. It gives subtle shadows on the walls and on the floor. Now you can see that the tail is hovering a bit, so I have to put up the scene a bit. And just for the tutorial sake, this should be enough to show how to create a flicker-free animation. Just go into the front view, and here you can see that my tables are floating. So I just select my vertices and pull them down a bit, and put the whole scene a bit upwards, like this. And I don't want to show or see the light in my rendering, so you can, in the settings of the light, turn off or check the invisible checkbox so it's not visible in my rendering. And now if you render again, You see the light has disappeared on the outside of the window. Okay, now you can increase the samples in your render settings under the image sampler. So if you increase this number, you will get much more sampling or divisions in one pixel. So if you put it up to 10, which is a bit high already, but if you now decrease this value to, let's say 0.2, you will get a much more detailed version. So I save this image, render out, which takes probably a while. Okay, as you can see now, I have a much more clearer image and a bit more detail in the corners, but it's still very, very grainy, so you have to still decrease this amount, let's say to 0.5, and increase this to 15. And let's see what happens now. For a bit better render, you can still put it up to medium animation, which will take now still longer to render. Okay, now the render is done with my much higher sample rate. It's a very different image now. It's very smooth in the sample levels. It's looking better than before, but the render time was increased more than double. So you have to, if you want to create realistic looking images, you have to know that you will end up getting a high render time per frame. So now you can see a lot of blotches here and here in the corners. These are due to the final gather map. So you have to increase the subdivision samples and the interpolation, but you could also just increase the presets here, which for me I think they are pretty nice and working pretty good. So I set them to high animation and put the subdivisions to, let's say, 100. And then I will re-render, so I'll be back in a minute. After the high quality final gather mode, the splotches have been illuminated. The render time increased a lot though, from 138 to 336, but you can see the blotches are almost gone now, and for this tutorial they look just fine. So if you would now go into render settings and render your animation, you would go into the Vray common mode, animation, set your number of frames and hit render. But if you would do it that way, every frame the final gather map would be re-rendered, so you would get different splotches on different locations. So if you play through the animation, you will see the splotches are moving, so it's a flickering animation, which not all of you like, so I show you how you could remove that effect. It is actually quite straightforward, but now I have a close look in the render settings. What I'm doing, I go into my option box and under Indirect Illumination, I first of all set them a bit lower because I don't want to render for ages today, so I just want to show you how the workflow would be. So you would go, after setting your presets or your settings for your Irradiance map, you would go into the mode options. So first you had single frame, which would mean in the animation it will recalculate the final gather map every frame. But now set it to incremental add to current map, which means that the map is created once at the first frame, and then only final gather points which aren't used or had been used before will be added to the current map. So you set that, and then you save it under your scenes location and render data, or wherever you like. I just call it Irradiance Map. So it's been saved, and I auto save the file to the same file. Yes. And then you have to go into the Vray common, and under the global options check don't render final image, so only the final gather map is being calculated. And in the common mode, because you don't need to recalculate the final gather points for every frame, you can increase or insert a value in. So you can insert a value here, so the map is only created, let's say, every 10th frame or something. But it depends on your speed of your animation, so mine isn't moving that much, as you can see. So I would like to create a final gather map on frame 1, let's say frame 5, 10, so I can get every angle a nice new final gather map, but only the first one will take longer and the next ones will be quite fast because it only adds certain points to the existing final gather map. So I set my by frame value to 5, which means every 5th frame is rendered and recalculated. And then if you check this box, it means only in the batch rendering mode here it will be calculated, but I like to turn it off so I can render it in the viewport already. So if I hit render now, it should render only the final gather map for 5 frames. So it's every 5th, and I just have 25, so it should actually go quite fast. As you can see below, they are calculated pretty fast, and in the viewport you can see the result. Okay, now the final gather map has been rendered, now you can change your mode settings to render your next images from your just created final gather map. So first of all, you go into the Indirect Illumination tab again and change, or first of all be sure to uncheck audio save, because if you render now another image, your just created final gather map will be rewritten. So turn that off and change your mode type to from file, choose your file you just rendered and insert it in here. Then, which I tend to almost forget, is to uncheck this checkbox so it renders again your final image, and in the common mode change your frame or by frame number to 1, so every frame it's rendered again. So if you now choose any frame from your animation, it will render a lot faster because it doesn't have to recalculate the final gather map. And then it immediately starts sampling and rendering your scene. Okay, now if you want to render your final animation without flickering, you go into your common mode, set your frame range, and you can check this box to render animation only in batch mode, which means if you would render now in the render view, it will just render 1 frame, but if you hit the batch render mode, it will render only there. But I like to keep that button off so I can render in my viewport, and then everything should be fine for for your animation. So I'll go to frame 1 and I'll hit the render button. So just keep in mind, I had a very low resolution and I didn't assign any specific shaders with texture maps, so it's just default Vray shaders with just color changes. And I just wanted to show you the workflow, how to create a flicker-free animation for camera animations or fly-through animations. This is the way I do it, which works almost every time, except if you have moving objects in your scene, then you have to, sadly, you have to render each final gather map frame per frame, so your render time will increase, but it will still be flicker free. But just keep in mind to use the add to incremental mode, because then only you will get flicker free animations. And now my machine will render the 25 frames, and I will upload the final result into my Vimeo channel so you can see the final result where no flickering appears. So guys, thanks for watching this final gather tutorial. If you have any questions or if you have any requests for new tutorials, please write on my channel or write me an email. I will answer and I will create a new tutorial if you like. So if you help me, I can help you, so keep in touch. Bye.